Welcome back to another shift here at the Intensive Car Unit. On this shift, we're going to be working towards designing and building the transmission mounts and designing and building the transmission torque tube and engine flanges themselves. Those are kind of the major component that we're actually going to need to build. But enough of the babbling for now. I've got plenty of that to go in this video. So what do you say we get to work?
So the program that I'm using is Fusion 360. It's a free software. I have zero formal education or experience with any CAD program, so this is entirely new to me. Part of that's been pretty frustrating, but it's also been kind of fun at the same time. Whenever I have a question on how to do something, I just hop on over to YouTube of all places, and there's usually a how-to guide on how to accomplish whatever task I'm looking for. Once that's all said and done, then I go ahead and ship that out to a company called OSH Cut, or there's several others out there that you can send it to. There's probably even some local places. But then they send them back to me, nicely packaged like this, and then I get them opened up, get all the little plastic wrap off, clean up the edges, and then get them assembled and get them welded. And here they are assembled but unwelded. You'll notice that I had keys cut into all the little various sections. That way they would fit together at a pretty snug fit. You saw me hammering them together. That makes just assembly be even more accurate from what they are in the drawings. I highly recommend doing it. It just takes a lot of stress and frustration out of the entire project. But let's go ahead and get them welded up. And here they are tack welded together, ready for final weld. Again, without using a CAD program, this would be much more difficult. It's just worth the effort to learn how to use something like this whenever you're building a project. With all of that said, let's go ahead and start working on the Corvette torque tube teardown. Nothing is ever complete without us doing a little bit of destruction. In this case, I need to cut apart the Corvette torque tube assembly so I can get measurements from the components that are used in the Corvette assembly. So then I can translate that stuff into the Maserati ToyoRati setup that I'm building, so the two can work in harmony. Um, this is just one of the many steps with this process. I got to cut it apart, got to clean it up, and I got to measure it. So go ahead and sit back and watch me destroy some stuff.
Okay, you just saw me lift the transmission onto the transmission hoist stand. Sorry. You just saw me lift the transmission onto the transmission stand. And with that, you saw me actually use the transmission mounts that I've made. Again, catted all that up, drew it up, sent it off to OSH cut. I think those cost me about 110 bucks, all things considered built. I did all the welding. I didn't do it on screen that much because I got a little too excited. I apologize. Anyways, I'm just rambling at this point. What I want to show you next is something I'm actually super excited about. It's way cooler than transmission mounts. It is something that actually needs a little bit of an introduction.
So we go back to Fusion 360. I took a ton of measurements off the Corvette torque tube flanges that I cut off the actual Corvette torque tube assembly. And in here, I'm just implementing those internal measurements that I got from their design. Each and every little part, every little receptacle, I measured it I don't know how many times. This is something that could not be done if I did not have access to a CAD software program such as Fusion 360. Once all that's said and done, I then turn around and ship that out to a local guy who was kind enough to 3D print them at a very reasonable price. And it just makes this whole setup so much easier to be able to hold these things in my hand. What you see here is the transmission or transaxle side of the torque tube flange assembly. And then this is the clutch cover or clutch housing side. These things are so cool, and I'm just so over the moon over how well these actually turned out.
Okay, now that you've seen what I've been working on for the last several months, I want you to see it actually being placed on. So remember, I drew this all up in CAD, I test fit it, and boom. Slides on perfectly. The Corvette torque tube assembly drive shaft will actually feed in from the transaxle side, just like in the Corvette setup. It'll fit in here, then the drive shaft will stick out, and then it'll attach to the clutch housing side where the input shaft from the transmission, or sorry, from the clutch comes in. And from there, I will have a tube made for this and then a custom length drive shaft made, probably by the drive shaft shop or somebody similar. And the torque tube assembly at that point will be done minus the assembly. I've already tech fitted both sides of this with the clutch housing as well, and everything is exactly what I need, minus the fact I screwed up on one of the dimensions on this one right in here, but that's already been adjusted. Now that we've got the transmission side assembled, let's go ahead and take a look at putting the drive or the clutch side. Again, this is the factory Corvette setup. My main thing that I'm testing is this assembly down here through Maserati flange. So let's go ahead and set it on here as such. Then boom, just like that. It fits, it works, and you get to see how bad the run out was on the input shaft on the Corvette that I got a hold of. Look at that. That thing is toast, but good thing because I'm replacing this anyways and I don't really care. The Corvette bearing carrier output shaft to the transmission is going to feed into the Maserati flange as such. You'll notice I got my C-clip already in there. This is just 3D printed. This is nothing crazy. Everything is nice and smooth, and then fits on nice and easy. So I need to get this piece made to interact with the Maserati transmission, and then I need to get the torque or the actual tube itself built and then the drive shaft built. So this side is a raging success. Just to show you the supposed final end result, here is the assembled 3D printed part. This is the factory C5 Corvette tube that I bought when I cut it down the torque tube assembly. I'm just going to get it lined up. It should fit on relatively easily. And there it is. Seated. Slid right on. And as you can see, it's one piece. And that's my game plan. I cannot reuse this torque tube or this hunk of aluminum. It's too short for what I'm doing. The C5 Corvettes is pretty short and small compared to the length of what I'm going to need because the engine on the Corvettes are very far rearward behind the front axles. This one's going to be actually in front of the front axle. So there we go. The assembly is assembled. I just need to do the last little bits of here and the last little bit of here, and torque tube will be ready to rock and roll. Holy cow, that was a ton of stuff we got accomplished on this shift. We were able to design and build the transmission mounts. We were able to actually load them with the weight of the transmission. We were able to then design and build the transmission torque tube flanges for both the transmission side and for the clutch housing side. Those are huge, huge successes. The fact that they worked as well as they have for my testing side of things, massive, 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 massive. It's starting to show me some light that this is moving in the right direction, it's exciting. That being said, there's still a ton of work to do. I still need to build the input shafts and output shafts for that torque tube assembly. So the design that I'm coming up with will actually work with the Maserati transaxle and the engine clutch cover assembly itself. Once that's done, then build the drive shaft as you people over the pond like to say, the propeller shaft. Get that built up and designed, and hopefully before too long I can start working on getting this engine in the actual spot there where it needs to be. As always, I'm just rambling along, but again, thank you. Please comment, like, subscribe. Your guys' comments are huge. They force me to continue to think a little bit deeper and a little bit different angles and stuff like that. It is massive on the feedback that I get from you guys. Again, as always, thank you, and please stay safe.